Chronicles, Fiction, The Apostle of Insanity Trilogy, Volume 2, Frenzy, by John Allen Price. Chapter 17.
Is that it, Captain?
Parker asked quietly, as the squad stopped at the edge of a small clearing.
It's the only structure for hundreds of kilometers in any direction,
Hunter answered.
It has to be the Citadel.
What had formerly been a glow on the horizon, almost indistinguishable from the Aurora Australis, had at last taken form and separated from the background light. To the naked eye, the Citadel appeared as a single squat spire rising from an increasingly deformed and stunted forest. Through the squad's night and sniper scopes, the huge complex appeared more detailed and much more complete than the photographs shown at the briefing only a few hours before. Also visible was an ant-like swarm over the structure and its immediate grounds. The construction crews were still hard at work.
It makes my skin crawl just to look at it,
said Parker, lowering her rifle and giving it to Halston so he could use its sight.
We have to sneak inside that?
Venetti added, incredulous.
There must be thousands of creatures working on it.
Tens of thousands, said Hunter. And before we can sneak inside it, we have to cross this. Hunter swept his hand over the terrain between the clearing they were poised to cross and the still distant Citadel. The forest grew increasingly sparse and the clearings larger, until, in its immediate vicinity, the landscape was nearly barren. And moving around the defiled terrain could be seen small groups of what appeared to be soldiers.
From here on in is the inner defense zone,
Hunter continued.
No more automated sensors, missile launchers, or observation posts. Now it'll be patrols of those creatures we were briefed on.
Necrotechnology hovercraft and minefields in some of the clearings. Rogers, set your motion detector and EM scanner accordingly. From here on in, we're to talk as little as possible and avoid all contact with the Dark Legion patrols until H-hour. We'll cross this clearing at its narrowest point, and only in pairs. Jake, you take point. We're still on schedule. 29 minutes, 11 seconds to H-hour.
I'll miss the sensation this gives to me, said Ragathol, smiling serenely. The flight from this planet to his castle will be a long one, and even though the ship is capable of it, it'll still be cramped. I must be prepared for that.
For what he expected to be the last time, Ragathol stood in the center of his nether room, his legs spread and his arms raised to its apex. The forces of the dark symmetry washed his body with a liquid green light. It glowed much brighter than it had at any other session, and almost seemed to dematerialize him. He barely heard Ekmiria's talking to the other necromutants who entered his room. This time, he chose not to end the session prematurely. He let the forces completely revitalize him before lowering his arms and moving out of the stance.
Who was that, and what news did he bring? He requested.
A messenger from Azarath,
said Ekmirias, turning his face to his master.
He brought news of the further human activity on the fringes of our domain. The probing units he destroyed earlier appear to be part of a larger operation. Capital warplanes are marshalling at the farthest range of our sensors and are accelerating towards us.
Is he preparing his defenses to stop them?
Yes, my master. The grid is being energized as we speak.
Does he expect my launch will be delayed any further?
Asked Ragathol, a glimmer of concern edging into the serenity of his voice.
His message to you is to proceed with your departure as planned,
Ekmirias answered.
He'll let us know if it has to be changed or delayed.
I'm confident Azarath has the ability to destroy the pitiful human attempt to assault us. Summon Calicobal and the Prey Corps to my presence. I wish to find out personally how their individual preparations are faring.
Finish your meal later, Renya-san,
Watanabe advised.
Here they come.
Ozawa noisily dropped his tray of fish cakes on the center's small table and rushed to the console. He eagerly scanned the main screen, but was unable to see any changes until Watanabe motioned to an auxiliary screen, and on it he found the expected cluster of aircraft symbols, some of them skimming along the terrain's contours and repeatedly dropping out of radar coverage, while others remained at considerable higher altitudes and cruised at slower airspeeds. The capital strike force had arrived.
Impressive, Corporal. Thank you for alerting me, said Ozawa, bowing slightly in Watanabe's direction.
We'll see if you're still thanking me in a few hours,
she said.
Now our real work begins. Inform our commander of this development. I'll handle the warheads. This is the command center to all drones. General cancellation order, Viper. Commence Z-plan on my mark. Mark, mark, mark.
In the 45 minutes since Watanabe had given the orders to launch more reconnaissance drones, the number of airborne had grown from 2 to 9. They prowled the airspace just beyond Dark Legion territory at varying altitudes and flying various pre-programmed flight courses. The moment she gave the command to execute her new orders, the warheads broke away from their current headings and moved to pre-selected holding points. As they did so, they reduced airspeed, dropped to treetop height, and shut down most of their active reconnaissance and navigation systems.
Excellent. All drones are responding perfectly,
Watanabe observed when the last row of her status lights changed to match the others.
I'm sorry, Corporal,
said Ozawa, bowing deeply after hanging up the telephone.
But I was able to talk only to the Commander Adjunct. The Major has retired for the evening and has left orders that he not be disturbed over trivial matters. Apparently, I have not enough stature to convince his adjunct that what we are watching is anything but a trivial. I'm sorry. You needn't apologize for the arrogance of our officers, Private. From the sound of it, you'd think they want combat to take place only during normal business hours.
And what should we do? Would the adjunct listen to you, Corporal?
Not directly,
said Watanabe.
We're on our own, Renya-san, and I rather prefer it this way. There's no one to enforce corporate policy on us, provided we do nothing excessive. We can make our own decisions. I want an update on the Capital Strike Force. Let's see if we can get a better position for our drones.
Razides, Hunter whispered, nodding at the latest Dark Legion patrol they encountered. Then he signaled for the squad to remain silent. Unlike the earlier patrols, which were seen only on the motion detectors or through the sniper and night scopes, this one passed close enough to the squad's position to be seen without aids. They could also be heard, and while the Legionnaires made little noise beyond the clink of their body armor, the Razides and Necromutants breathed heavily, and the ground seemed to shake under them. This is especially true for the Razides, grotesque humanoid creatures standing over 10 feet tall. There were only a few of them in the patrol, which they commanded telepathically. Their growing yellow eyes swept the terrain repeatedly like twin laser beams. When one of them stared repeatedly at the squad's position, they all believed they had been spotted. The Razides wore no armor. Their skin seemed thick enough to be armor on its own, and the weapons they carried were either Gatling guns or rocket launchers, which they seemed to handle as easily as a normal man would an assault rifle.
God, I don't think even Bob Watts could handle these things,
Halston said quietly, after the patrol had moved by their position and was blending back into the night.
Not without some major fire support,
said Hunter.
Or air support. Raymond, the radio. Who you gonna contact?
Asked Rogers, passing the handset over to Hunter.
H-hour's still 9 minutes away.
Julia, the Air Force will create a lot of havoc, and we need our localized air support to get through these patrols. If she takes off now, she'll get here just after they make their initial attack runs.
Lieutenant, I got increased EM activity in the radar frequencies,
Taylor warned, watching the display change subtly on one of his CRT screens.
Are they intensifying the scans in our area?
Asked Alvarez.
No, it's an across-the-board increase. It looks to me like the whole defense grid's been energized. We're about 9 minutes away from H-hour,
Sutter advised.
Perhaps they've spotted the first wave of felines?
Rapier, this is Battle Axe. Rapier, this is Battle Axe, said a distant, familiar voice above the Aurora-induced background static. Do you read? Over.
Battle Axe, this is Rapier. You're weak, but we can read you,
said Alvarez, surprised by the unexpected contact.
Do you need evac? Over.
Negative, Rapier. We'll be needing the fire support soon. Immediate dust off and follow the lead elements in. Contact us when you reach the inner zone. Battle Axe out.
Roger, Battle Axe. This is Rapier. Out. Jeff, you check the weapons. I'll check the flight systems.
For nearly an hour, the Cutlass had sat motionless amid the wreckage of the larger transport and nearly silent, except for the muffled whine of its auxiliary-powered turbine. Now, a deeper rumble shook the immediate area as its main engines were restarted. Minus its external lights, the gunship rapidly came to life and filled the air with the same fine ash it had kicked up on landing. Then it lifted into the air and rose just high enough to clear the trees surrounding the crash site.
Lieutenant, request permission to be an art critic,
Taylor asked, moments after liftoff.
Permission granted,
said Alvarez.
Make it quick.
The helicopter's 15mm tail gun snapped down from the shallow recess it normally traveled in and swung toward the Dark Legion marker. With the ash cloud swirling around it, the statue was a relatively easy target for a lock-on. The 2-second burst briefly illuminated the aircraft's aft fuselage and the tail boom, and spit out enough high-explosive and armor-piercing incendiary shells to blast the screaming figure into a widely scattered arc of rubble. By the time the ash cloud finished dissipating over the crash site, the lead flights of FA-99s would be whistling past it.
Hold it,
said Hunter, just loud enough for everyone in the squad to hear it, except for the point man.
5 minutes till H-hour.
The squad stopped in the middle of the stunted trees they were moving through and turned to the north. Shaka rejoined them a few seconds later and did not ask what they were waiting for or trying to see.
We're not even going to hear those first charges?
Benetti advised, sensing the rise in the tension among the others.
So don't expect...
A nova-like flash rose out of the darkened forest and became a boiling red fireball about the size of the sun. It was still consuming the munitions in the first missile launcher the squad had mined when a sharp clap, followed by a prolonged rumble, echoed across the terrain. It had yet to dissipate when a second flared into existence a little further to the east.
Excellent,
said Hunter, smiling malevolently.
The whole grid in this sector should be going down. The next thing we hear should be... Damn, what's that? Some kind of tracer fire, Captain,
said Halston, responding to the bright green spurts of light being sprayed out of the forest from several positions north of where the squad had halted.
And from the looks of it, they're letting loose with some heavy caliber stuff.
Mitch, look, Roger suggested, holding out the motion detector to Hunter. On its viewplate could be seen several amoeba-like masses moving suddenly in uncoordinated directions.
They're confused,
said Hunter.
They know there's an enemy, but they can't tell where. It looks like they're trying to shoot down the fireballs.
Listen to them, said Wendy. Above the chatter of the automatic weapons and the thump of demolition charges going off could be heard an inhuman wailing. It never let up and seemed to roll ceaselessly like waves on the beach.
It's that screaming Captain Steiner told us about. God, you could go insane listening to that,
Shaka remarked. At least they'll be easier to avoid. Or locate, said Hunter, thinking for a moment.
I wonder. Wonder about what?
Asked Rogers.
If we could pull the same deceptions on those creatures as we've done on the other Megacorp forces. Advise me when you spot a small patrol, and we'll try to set up one of our ambushes. All right, we've seen enough. Move it out. There'll be plenty more fireworks for us to see in the future. Another 3 minutes and the lead flats will be entering missile range of the Citadel's outer defenses,
Hart advised, watching the first group of symbols rapidly approach the shaded area beyond the actual boundary to the Dark Legion territory. I can read a tactical map just as well as you, said Wood, irritated. Even if the net doesn't go down, it'll still be difficult for the Legion to intercept those planes because of their altitude. If they have to, they'll fight their way through the net on their own. That's why we put defense suppression jets in the lead.
Mr. Wood, we're getting EM fluctuations in the net, said the senior coordinating officer. Something's happening.
Wood turned back to the center's main screen as the nervous conversations he and the other officials were having died away. For several moments, only the hum of electronics could be heard. Then warning tones pierced the silence, and a swarm of new symbols appeared on the screen. All were located inside the Dark Legion's territory, and all indicated either a loss of power, cessation of radar transmissions, or an explosion.
"They did it," shouted General Sumner. "We got at least 2 holes appearing in the net. Colonel, advise the strike leaders. Command's primary mission plan: destroy as much of the net as possible and attack the Citadel's inner defenses."
"It looks as though Hunter's squad has been the most successful," said Wood, taking note of where most of the displacement symbols were located. Then he shot a laser-hot glance at Hart. "It appears as though my faith in them was justified after all, and my confidence not misplaced."
"It appears, sir,"
was all Hart managed to say at first.
"And for the woman's sake, we should all hope they'll continue to be successful."
"Yes, let's hope so. If Hunter is smart, he'll hold his squad back until the main attack elements arrive and enter the Citadel with them. Somehow, I think he'll find a way of sneaking into it all by himself." On the main screen, formations of warplanes maneuvered to align themselves with the 2 partial corridors that had been opened in the grid. The moment they entered, they broke into pairs and fanned out to attack more of its missile launchers, gun mounts, and radar sites. And at the forward bases along the frontier, the first symbols to appear, from any of them in hours, popped onto the screen and started circling. The Hercules assault transports and AH-19 gunships were taking off. Mutant Chronicles, Fiction. The Apostle of Insanity Trilogy, Volume 2, Frenzy, by John Allen Price. Chapter 17. End.